Askreddit by deleted. African proverb says the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel the warmth. What time in your life have you been closest to starting the fire? 16 years old. Finally decided to fight back against abusive parents. Only had to do it once to stop the physical abuse. The brain fucks kept happening. It's so terrible when the people that are supposed to protect you are your abusers. I'm so sorry you've had to live through this. I used to work in fast food, and was the only person in the store that didn't smoke. Everyone else got to take a break to smoke, but since I didn't smoke, I wasn't allowed to. Eventually, I spoke to the owner about it and was rebuffed, so I went over their heads to the company board. Owner got his ass chewed out for rebuffing me and I wound up getting a huge bonus my next paycheck, but when they discovered I reported them, I got fired immediately. Turns out they'd been violating company policy in food prep and storage, so I filed another report to corporate. Store got shut down for months and my former boss got fined 6 figures. When I managed a pizza place 20 years ago, I used to give non-smokers a Coke break to go drink a soda. It never seemed fair to me that the smokers would go fuck off for 10-20 minutes while everyone else worked. Plus, they always wanted to go smoke as soon as rush was over and it was time to clean. My brother is 10 years younger than me and is a teenager. I regularly drive him around to see his girlfriend and to his classes. Recently he's becoming very disrespectful and downright rude. He's only nice to me if I've made food or if he needs a ride, and in a way that pisses me off even more. The amount of times I have seriously considered pulling over and making him walk the last 10 miles home. You shouldn't drive him around. Just don't drive him around if he's disrespectful. My dad didn't seem to take any interest in my life since I was 4. Then when my mum left him and I told him I was going to leave, he then proceeded to do everything to get me to live with him. Buying me stuff, telling me mum isn't a fit parent, trying to get custody in court. I decided to live with him because I was too scared to start a new school midway through the year. He then dates this woman who was pretty much the catalyst in destroying their marriage and gets mad at me when I don't treat her like a mother. Mum is now trying to get custody and I would burn his house to the ground if it meant she would win. Just go and live with her. Refuse to go back. Your dad will have to go through the system to get you back. True, the cops might take you back to him once or maybe even twice, but ultimately if you are stubborn enough, the cops will refuse to do your father's bidding and tell him to take it to court. Trust me on this. Just go to your mum now. Wife was a senior staff for a local science fiction convention. Not only was she an unpaid volunteer, she had to take a vacation day off work and pay for her hotel room and parking. On the morning that the convention started, she was setting up the first of the 3 rooms she was responsible for: manual labor, moving tables, setting up shelves and loading them with stuff, and somebody came in, took her ID badge off her desk, and brought it to the convention's lost and found. Convention LF lady told wife that lost badges have a $5 fee to get them back. Wife looked at the badge, looked at her, and said, "Keep it. I'm going home. Have a nice convention." Wife was about 25 feet down the hall when LF lady caught up to her and returned her badge. Wow. It was like they were trying to burn down their own village at that point. Oh man, middle school for me. I was heavy bullied at school, mentally and physically. I wasn't getting any support at home or felt like I was. I was not in a good place then. I had so many negative thoughts of hurting others and myself. Thankfully I never had a gun or I would have become one of those school shooters. That's how bad and deep in depression I was in. I did end up in a psych ward and man, those places are terrible. I didn't get any help but only learned to bottle my shit up more. Do you think you'll recover and be happy? I can absolutely attest to being around people who are love-starved and then subsequently self-sabotaging or otherwise destructive. In a softer sense, if I have felt rejected, I have felt peace and sort of burning bridges to find myself. May the bridges you burn light the way forward. Move to a new town. and started going to a new church when Dad got cancer. Went to church and told the pastor to try and get advice. Pastor announced this to the convocation, and also told everyone that some lady's horse was sick. Watched the entire convocation console this lady about her sick horse. The convocation was in tears about some sick horse while my dad was dying. No one said a word to my family. Never been to church since. Oh, that's awful. I'm from the UK, so many of us are not brought up in any religion. But my friend was starting to go to our local church and she just received news that her boss's new baby, a few days old, had unexpectedly died. Totally distraught, she went to church and had a word with the vicar asking could the baby be mentioned in the please pray for section of the service. She was appalled when the first question asked was the baby Christian, as if any other baby would not be worth mentioning in the service. When a clearly upset parishioner needed the support of the church at that time, she never went again. Whenever I'm in a meeting and my suggestions are getting consistently ignored and I'm getting interrupted and talked over, I get the weirdest urge to prove I still exist by jumping on the table and busting out the Queen of the Night aria. Edit. There's a lot of good advice in the replies. I will say that in about 60% of my meetings this is never an issue, and in the other 40% it's an issue because of a few specific co-workers who resort to just yelling if confronted politely. Their managers have been made aware of this. Bring an air horn. Then just continue talking as if nothing interrupted you. I cannot guarantee the success of this strategy. When I had been bullied constantly in 7th grade by 3 different groups of kids and the school showed so little interest in helping me. I was physically bullied, verbally mocked, humiliated in front of the other kids, and I was battered. When I finally took my mom's advice to make a scene the next time someone started throwing things at me, I did it. We were outside that day for PE and while we were all sitting in lines at the start of class, a kid in the line next to me started throwing pebbles at me. I ignored it for a moment, then when he kept going I yelled at him to stop. I didn't care that people were staring, I wanted them to. I wanted them to see that this average height, able-bodied boy was throwing things at me, a very small and disabled girl. The teacher came over and asked what happened. Kid told him they were only pebbles, he wasn't hurting me. The teak. I don't know what it is about some teachers, but the second they get put in charge of more than one child they become absolutely blind to any kind of bullying, and if it gets pointed out to them, they think that particular incident exists in a vacuum and couldn't possibly be a sign of anything worse. I was 11 years old and suicidal because I felt so incredibly powerless. That teacher only solidified that feeling. Throw pebbles at the teacher. They won't hurt, they're only pebbles. When I was a kid my dad used to beat on me pretty often. When he was sober I usually did something to deserve it. When he wasn't it was just go time. One night, I was 14. He got drunk and when I got home from a girlfriend's place he cornered me and put a revolver to my head. He told me how worthless I was and that he would be doing me a favor by killing me. I didn't respond. I didn't move. I just waited for him to pull the trigger. He didn't. He left my room and left a revolver on my dresser as he walked out. I took the revolver and went out. I walked around my hometown, sat by the river and thought about all the ways I could get back at him for all the misery he caused my mother, sister, and I. I also considered doing the old Kurt Cobain, but that's not relevant. I took the weapon apart and threw its pieces in the river. No one's asked me about the gun since. It's probably still there. Edit. Holy shit, that blew up. Thanks for all the upvotes and awards, everyone. Deleted. Bullied in middle and high school, relentlessly, and occasionally violently. Administration turned their backs on me when I needed help, but was always there to come down on me like a ton of bricks when I made the smallest mistake. Became a loner, went from a straight A student to failing nearly every class. I felt betrayed and abandoned by everyone I trusted to help me at that school. The undiagnosed mental illness didn't help things either. If I had access to weapons back then, I probably would have been a statistic. Luckily this was 20 years ago and I've gotten help through counseling and medication. My old job. A lot of people quit when I did. They'll survive. But the atmosphere isn't nearly as light anymore because all the fun people left except one. And now the turnover rate is ridiculously high. Deleted. Working in public accounting as an auditor, 65+ hour weeks. Getting yelled at by clients for things that aren't your fault. Getting chewed out by your manager for being under budgeted hours for a client. Staying in hotels 5 days a week during busy season. Eating poorly because you never had time to cook. Let's just say one of the best days of my life was when I got laid off from that place, which opened the door for a great opportunity with none of the issues listed above. Isn't being treated like a nuisance when requesting supporting documents just the best, especially for doing walkthroughs? And when you realize the client didn't give everything needed, it's suddenly you who must be at fault, and it seems that both the client's staff and your own in charges are ganging up on you? Also, the very idea of time budgets can fuck right off. Grew up with an incredibly privileged but emotionally abusive family. I never really fit in. They would frequently gaslight me with so much, but one that made me feel like I was going crazy was that they all hated each other but would act like I was the only one to fight with anyone else and band together in that. I've moved out now, but there were many nights when I felt like I was going crazy and that I could burn that house down and not look back. Glad I didn't though, always a better way out. Edit. Wow, not a huge redditor. First comment I've had with any real engagement. It's nice to hear there's other people who've dealt with the same stuff and still surviving as well. Nice to know Pete's not alone in it. Stay strong. Happy living. Fucking hell. You've just described my current life situation to the max. First, I'm so sorry you grew up in that environment, and I'm very happy and proud you've moved out and on with your life. It sucks so bad that the very people you are supposed to rely on are the very people who beat you down. How did you get out of it? Or if you had advice for someone in a similar situation, what advice would you give them? Here in Australia, the fire starts itself. Already am. Therapy is a magical thing where you learn to burn down anything that is bad for you. And then you take it to your family. My family seems to be somewhat accepting of me burying down the stupidity that is hurting us all, and leaving the nice things, though. In therapy now and agree with you. Sadly, burning down the bad stuff has included my family. I am happy you are better off today than yesterday. The church group of churches pseudo-cult I grew up in was very much this way. Didn't go to the right school,